Our learning target for today is I can learn about value and use it to create an abstract work of art. I'll know I've succeeded when my work of art shows the lightness and darkness of the colors I've chosen. Let's define a couple of terms before we start. So, what is abstract art? Abstract art is modern art that does not include images of our everyday world. In other words, it's not a picture of something we might recognize. It has color, lines, and shapes, but they're not intended to represent objects of living things. What is value? Value is an element of art, and remember, an element of art is just a fancy way of saying an ingredient we use to create art. And value includes how light or how dark a color is. We can change the value of a color by adding white, that's when we tint the color, or we could add black, that's when we shade a color. For this project, you will need 1/2 sheet of paper that is white, 1 black Sharpie, and crayons. To start, you'll use your Sharpie and the 1/2 sheet of paper. You're going to begin by drawing one continuous line that includes lots of loops and swirls and crosses over its own self several times. As you can see here, I just started drawing. I didn't have any plan or use pencil first. Now this next part is how we give the abstract art a little bit of an interesting definition as to the areas we're going to color. Do you notice how anywhere where my lines intersect, anywhere where they connect, I am rounding off those edges. So instead of a sharp angle where the lines cross each other, I am making them sort of blob together. I kind of imagine it if I had a bottle of glue, and you know how when glue puddles together it might look something like this? So anywhere where the lines intersect, as you can see right there, I'm smoothing out the corner. Instead of having the sharp angle, I want to have smooth edges. My shapes are becoming very organic as they're smoothed out. I darkened my line a little as you can see that I'm doing here. But you'll notice that immediately it starts to take shape. It doesn't necessarily look like scribbles once we start rounding our corners. So the corners get rounded. There we go. This one. And I'm going to round that last one. And you don't have to round them all the same, but round them enough so that then when you color in the area that is the intersection of those lines, you start to see some neat shapes and design coming from that. All right, I'm going to darken the lines. I'm going to continue with exactly what I'm doing, rounding off the corners so there's no sharp corners in there, making all of my shapes a lot more bubble-like. They're rounded off, darkening my lines, and then we'll add color. So keep rounding your lines as we go. Okay, you'll notice that our scribbles no longer look like scribbles. They look like some cool shape, and now we're ready for color. So we learned earlier that value is the lightness or darkness of a color. And we're going to be using crayons. So how are we going to achieve that? How are we going to show that there is light coming on one side, therefore making our colors have a lighter value versus a darker side? Well, I'm going to imagine that the light is coming from the right side of my paper. So that means that the left side, or the side that I'm starting with over here, is going to need to be darker. It's kind of in maybe a little bit of a shadow, and so it has a darker look to it. As I get closer to the side where I'm saying my light's coming from, I'm going to color much lighter. This is a way to achieve value. We're not adding white or black, but we are adding the intensity of which we are using the crayon. So for example, I'm coloring really, really hard and pushing really hard for this part so that my crayon makes a much darker value. And then as I'm going across this egg shape, I am lightening how hard I push. So instead of pushing really hard on the crayon, I'm pushing medium. As I get closer to the right side, I am barely coloring at all, barely pushing down with my crayon. You can really see how one side looks darker and one side looks lighter. Again, I want to keep it the same as I go through every bubble that I'm coloring. So much darker on the left, lighter on the right. It doesn't actually matter which side you choose as the darker side and which side you choose as the lighter, as long as you stay consistent. So whatever you decide to do that the whole time. Again, really dark here, pushing super hard on the left side of my shape. As I start moving towards the right, I'm not pushing so hard, gently coloring so that by the time I'm all the way over to the right, I'm hardly pushing the crayon at all. This is giving my shape a much lighter value on the right and a much darker value on the left. And that's it. I have added my initials because I wanted to make sure that I had signed my work. And I can definitely see that this project has a lot of value in the way it's colored. We've got lightness and darkness of a color, actually of 3 different colors because those are the colors I chose to use. And we have now created an abstract work of art using value. Respond on Google Classroom by posting your work on this slide and turning it in. I can't wait to see how fabulous these are.